experienced people who like a place, like people love this velodrome. It's a part of them. It really is. It's very impressive. Like, I got through that opening night. It was May 29th. It was a huge 50th anniversary celebration. We had gorgeous fireworks. Everything was great. It was a huge night. And I sat down at the end of the night and there was not anybody here. And I just looked around and I was like, wow. You know, tear ran down my face. I was like, I can't believe I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this. And then I came back the next day and, you know, started it up again from the following Friday. And that's been really impressive. It's a really good place.
That was Gary Thornton, Executive Director of the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, also known as T-Town, also known as the Velodrome. And this is the Outside Delaware River Towns podcast, where we highlight personalities of outdoor recreation in the Delaware River Towns area. I'm Vince, and this is episode number 1. I've known Gary for almost a decade now. We've run into each other at cycling events locally and all across the country. And if you've participated in a cycling event, especially cyclocross locally, you might recognize his face, but you'll certainly recognize his voice, as he's been a prolific race announcer for years. And now, since January, he's been the executive director of the Velodrome. So in this conversation, we talk about what the Velodrome is, how it came to be, where it's going, and how he got there. So this is my conversation with Gary. Well, thanks for taking your time to do this.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
I think the last time I saw you was on a dirt road in Kansas last year.
That's right.
As a Peloton was getting ready to come through in a cloud of dust at Unbound.
In the dark before sunrise.
Yes.
Yep.
With lots of bubbles, thousands.
Yep. That was exciting. And then they came through like a freight train.
Yeah.
And then they were gone.
Yeah, until the next group.
Right. So let's just start with, where are we right now?
Here. We are at the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, or as most people call it, T-Town. It's the Velodrome here in Lehigh County.
And what is a velodrome?
Velodrome is a very specific place to ride a bicycle. As you can see kind of over my shoulder, it's this pill-shaped oval. We call it the concrete crater. And this is one of the direct ways to go to the Olympics for sport for many people. Track racing is extremely specialized. You have to obviously have a track. There's 16 of them in the United States. T-Town, the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, is considered one of the preeminent ones. It's been around. We're now in our 50th year. I was just talking to somebody yesterday. There's a track they're doing their 100th anniversary, so that was pretty heartening.
And why is this here in the Lehigh Valley?
That's a great question and a really good story. It's a little bit of Kevin Costner, if you build it, they will come, out in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere. But this land that the Velodrome is on, and a lot of land around the Lehigh Valley, was donated by the Rodale family. And the Rodale family has a really long history in the Lehigh Valley. And what they are most known for is their publishing company, where they owned bicycling and Runner's World and organic gardening. Organic gardening is where they really have done the most of their work and what they're known for. The Rodale family had a saying, I think we've got it right out on the track. It says, healthy soil plus healthy food equals healthy people. And they had a very strong belief of growing good, healthy food to encourage people to live a healthy lifestyle. You have to start at the base of it. So they did very well as the Rodale family. And Bob Rodale was actually an Olympian. He was not a cycling Olympian. He was an Olympian in, I believe, skeet shooting.
Yep, I think that's right.
Yep. And while he was in Mexico City in 1968, he saw a velodrome and he just became enamored with it because it's so amazing to watch these athletes ride around on this track. So he met a few people there in the Olympics, and the Rodale family had land that they had donated to Lehigh County. So they decided to build this velodrome here as a place for people to have, a good experience riding a bike. And This is going into what we start to call now the next 50. We celebrated our 50th anniversary in October last year. We're in our 50th season. And it's a public-private partnership between the Rodale family, what's called the Velodrome Fund, and Lehigh County. And Lehigh County is great, taking care of the upkeep, managing all of mowing our yards and all of that stuff. And we manage the buildings and the racing here.
And so my understanding is that it was initially built as more like a community venue, but has become like a world-class sporting venue for track cycling. How did it reach that status when it was just initial intention was for the local community?
The Velodrome has just this wonderful duality, and the racing, I refer to it to a lot of people as the shiny disco ball. The racing is great. We have world-class racing, international level racing every Friday night. And that's what gets people excited. That's what brings people in to try to experience it or see what's happening in the Velodrome. We could talk about why the Velodrome bikes are a little different in a bit and why it is so different. But the duality of this place is it is most of the time occupied with community programs. Community programs are what we do in this facility on the track a lot more than the actual racing throughout the week. We have classes from our Pee-wee peddlers and our Weeble Wobblers up to try the track. You can try the track at any age. And we've had 70, 80-year-old people come in and want to learn how to ride the track. So the interesting thing about this Velodrome is if you read the mission statement of the Valley Preferred Cycling Center, the word racing isn't actually in it. It speaks about riding. And that's what drew me here. I love racing. I'm a huge fan of racing. I've been involved in racing for a very long time from the outside as not a racer, because physically that's not what I'm able to do, and mentally I'm just not set up to race at that level. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I understood that, in my early 20s, got over that. But to be around these world-class athletes and see how they take it so seriously and they work so hard, it is very impressive. And these same athletes teach our community programs. So we have an 8-year-old looking at a national champion who helps them. And that same 8-year-old can come watch on a Friday night and see their coach set a flying mile record on a Friday night. Listen to the whole crowd go crazy for their coach that's speaking to them one-on-one on a Wednesday afternoon. That's pretty exciting.
And these elite pros that are mentoring these kids, are these mostly homegrown people that have grown up at this Velodrome, or are they coming from the outside?
We've got it all here, luckily. I mean, one of the wonderful things about this Velodrome, it draws international athletes into the Lehigh Valley, and it always has. I'm from Bucks County, as you know. I've spent a lot of time there, but I've always loved the community up here, and the community up here for cycling, I believe, started with that Rodale influence, not just on the track, but out in the road. When Rodale Press used to be anchored in Emmaus, it was a cycling hotbed, and it still remains that. So coming up here and being able to work with the local athletes and the international athletes is great. Like right now, leading our Rider of the Year competition, a local gentleman, young man, Dakota Stein, he's in his early 20s. He's leading our Rider of the Year competition. He grew up racing this track. He learned track racing here. But then the next person in line for that is this outstanding athlete out of New Zealand. And the New Zealanders, or the Australians, love to come here in the summer because it's their winter. Mm-hmm. So they can come here, ride in shorts and short sleeves, get some speed in their legs, and go back to the beginning of their season and have speed in their legs and be able to go. So we have this great mix of Dakota Stein, local kid, just broke our mile record, which is amazing. Wow. And then Magnus Jameson, sprint champion from New Zealand. It's a little bit of everything here on the track.
And is there something unique about Valley Preferred that they would come here instead of one of the other 15 tracks in the United States?
I believe that there are a few things that help bring the athletes here to T-Town, and that is we have a very well-maintained track. We have active racing throughout the year. A lot of the tracks that are still in the United States are in different levels of repair or disrepair, and not to cast shade on anything, it just is. So we have a very well-maintained track surface, and we're on the East Coast. We're in the middle of everything that's easy to get to. If you're coming here, we're close to, Newark, we're close to JFK, we're really close to Philadelphia Airport. Whereas a cycling hotbed, a destination where you and I have run into each other before in Arkansas, it's hard to get to. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to get to. Not to knock them at all, but it's different logistics. If you want to come here from Europe, it's a 5-hour flight. You can schedule a car. There's a hotel not even half a mile away from here. Mm. So it is a great place to come because we have active racing all year. We publish our schedule. And this year, the beginning of the year, we hosted a UCI international race. We had full track, which is 36 riders on the track, is really exciting. And they were from all over the place. And 2026 is starting to ramp up a little bit, but 2027 is a very important year for athletes that are looking to be on an Olympic track. Mm-hmm. We are not a track that people could qualify for the Olympics on or anything like that, but we are a track where people can get their national team points. So we had the UCI race a few weeks ago. We have an active racing schedule, and we know that coming into 2028, people are going to want to accumulate points for UCI points. Mm-hmm. The UCI is the international governing body where most races we do are under USA Cycling. Right. And the Olympics are in LA in 2028, and the track in LA is the only official Olympic track in the United States. Our track is 333 meters long, and it is concrete and is a community-based track. We have open doors. People can come in and train. There are a little bit of hoops to go through, but not that much. Anybody could come in across the street and try the track if there's not active racing or training going on. The track in LA is 250 meters, which is considerably shorter, and it's wooden.
Interesting. Okay.
So by making the track shorter, the turns are steeper. So we can do community programming because we have 30-degree banking in our turns, and we have concrete that has some grip on it. So we can have an 8-year-old kid on the track, and they can get enough grip to get going and not really worry about falling off. Not that people are going to fall off of a wooden 250 track. That's a little dramatic, but it's certainly not as easy to maintain staying upright on for a very small child.
Right.
So, this track really lends itself well to having community programs, and the amount of community programs that we run throughout the season and the volume of children that we get through here, it is akin to a Little League program. And we have all of these kids learning cycling and bicycle racing at a very young age. If they don't want to go on and race bicycles, I personally okay with that. I mean, we always want people to go to racing, but the goal is to get more riders, to get people to be aware of people riding bicycles in the community.
You mentioned some might move on to racing. So there's a program where you're not competing basically at a younger age.
Sure.
What does that look like?
What it looks like is you come in with a group of similar aged kids, and we have one or two of our athletes coach them on safe ways to ride a bike, ways to get around the track. And they will run little simulation of races, but they're not full-scale races. They're fun. They're geared for 8-year-olds and things like that. We have a program that is specifically designed towards racing if that's where you would like to go, and it's called the Bicycle Racing League, the BRL. And if you want to learn how to take your steps up, the BRL is a great way to do it. I did the BRL in my 20s, kind of when my kids were young, and we would come up here and I would do the classes, and then I got invited to a Friday night and got to, race under the lights, which the Friday nights are usually reserved for the pro racers. So it's a little bit of a reward for the BRL people to be able to step up and come to Friday night, but it shows them what could happen and how things can be.
So talk a little bit about Friday night, because that's what I know about the T-Town. So what goes on Friday nights?
Friday nights, we refer to it as the big show. I mean, it's our night to put our best foot forward in terms of our racing. And we race on Saturdays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. And if you're just starting racing, you start on Saturdays. And then as you progress, you can race on Saturdays. And maybe there's a couple of races you can do on Tuesdays. If you progress to the level that you're on Tuesdays, you can race Tuesdays and then progress up to Friday night. So there's stepping stones through the process in what categories you are and how you work your way up. Friday nights are essentially pro level racing. And we have pros that are locals who came up through Bicycle Racing League at 6 years old, who are now 20 and leading standings. And then we also have the international riders who come through. And one thing that we've worked enormously hard on this year in our 50th season is presenting world-class bike racing and presenting a really nice place for a family to be on a Friday night. Because bicycle racing is a little specific. And people who are really into it are really into it. But we want other people to see it. So we've invested in our own bounce houses this year. We have programs in the plaza behind me where there are things that families can do aside from bike racing. So if you come here with a 6 and an 8-year-old and they're tugging on you and going, I don't want to sit still anymore, we can help accommodate that to make sure that people are still here to experience the racing. And we've opened up our gates a couple of times to the local community here, Upper Macungie Township, and trying to bring people in to see what we do over here in the field of dreams. And once people get the look over the edge, you can see a shift in their eyes. And I talk to people, it's their first time coming through, and they just talk to me about how they just didn't know. They had no idea. And that's a really common theme because these track bikes are very specific. A lot of us ride bikes. Almost everybody knows how to ride a bike. And the track bike is almost like the bike you learn to ride on in the United States. It's got one gear. You get pedaling and you can go down the road. The difference is we in the United States learn how to ride on a bike that's got a coaster brake. So we get pedaling, we level our legs off, and we coast down the road. If we want to stop, we pull our legs back, and that puts the brakes on. These track bikes are one gear like that, but there is no mechanism for it to coast. It's a fixed gear bicycle. The chain directly connects the cranks to the rear wheel. So once you start that momentum going, you have to continue that momentum. If you get going pretty quick on that and you forget you're on the track bike on that fixed gear and you let your legs go to try to coast, the bike auto-corrects you really fast in ways that you might not be ready for. So it really requires a lot of attention to continuously turn your legs. The way to slow down is we use the bankings up and down the track. If you want to slow down a little bit, you can swing up the banking, and that 30 degrees will help to slow you down. You can add a little bit more weight into your legs to try to, bring it back down. But in racing, the only way to go faster is to turn your legs faster. And it's really exciting to see a big race out here when you see a big group and all of a sudden one person jumps out of the front of the pack and tries to go all the way around and lap the field, there is a significant difference in how fast their legs are going versus everybody else's legs. And that's the only way to go fast. Make your legs go faster. You have to choose your gear beforehand. Years ago, when I first learned about track racing, people rode pretty small gears. The trend these days are very large gears, and they get these very large gears up and running, and then they stay on top of them, and they go very, very fast, upwards of 30 miles an hour into the 40 mile an hour range.
So a motorcycle just went by, so it might be a good time to talk about moto pacing. So why would a motorcycle be on the track for bicycle racing?
There's two reasons motorcycle would be on the track here in the Velodrome. One is, and the reason it's out there right now, is there's training called motor pacing. And the driver on the motorcycle, very skilled track rider himself, and a coach who knows how to ride the motorcycle will get literally onto the track, and people will get behind them and draft. I would imagine most people listening to you know about bikes. I imagine some people don't. The equivalent that we can do to velodromes for people who are neophytes to bike racing is, this is NASCAR on bicycles. The entire goal is go fast, turn left. The only way to go fast is to literally go fast. You can train all you want slow. That helps you with miles. That helps you with a lot of stuff. But if you want to ride at a fast pace, you have to turn that big gear over quick. So in motor pacing, cyclists will get behind the motor, and they'll be 6 inches off his rear wheel, 12 inches off of his rear wheel, taking a draft just like you would in NASCAR. So if the motorcycle's doing 35 miles an hour, that person's out there turning their legs over at 35 miles an hour at a much easier rate than they would do that by themselves. So that's very good training. The other part of that training is the motorcycle's going to pull off at one point, and then you have to go that speed or faster by yourself. So I say there's two ways you can ride a motorcycle on the track. The other one is there are actually specific races called the Keirin. And the Keirin is, they start the race behind the motorcycle. So start-finish line is down the home straight back there, and the riders are sitting. The motorcycle will ride around, and as the motorcycle gets in front, the official shoots their starter's pistol, and the athletes jump right on the wheel of that motorcycle. Typical Keirin would be 5 laps. 2.5 laps they're going to do behind that motorcycle, progressively going faster and faster. As they get to the end, right when the motorcycle pulls off, then it's game on. Then it's pure human-powered drama, 2.5 laps, straight up head-to-head sprint. And they're released in the mid to high 30s. So then immediately these athletes shoot into the mid 40s and start to play games. It's amazing to watch. It really is.
So that's a good segue into the different types of racing. If you could briefly describe some of the different types of racing or different types of races that occur at the track.
Yeah, there's the most straight up race that everybody understands is, head-to-head racing. First person across the line wins. And that's what in track racing they refer to as a scratch race. So you're doing a scratch race, first person across the line is going to win. But there are elimination races where you'll start at a large field, and then the last person across the line every time gets pulled out of the field. So if we start with 20 people out there, lap by lap, it just gets a little bit more competitive. And there's a game on that as to how much are you going to stay on the front versus how much are you going to stay in the back. And every time you come past the officials, you have to scoot up to not be that last person across the line. There are points races where you can get points for being the first person across the line in multi-lap races. Those get a little bit more difficult to score or a little bit more difficult to play chess while you're on the track. And the really elite track racers, we have a multi-time national champion. Her home track is here. Her name is Kim Zubris. And Kim is a phenomenal athlete. But Kim is also intelligent enough in the race to be able to count points at the same time that she's going really hard. A lot of elite athletes can. Mm-hmm. A lot can't. That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I could never do that. Sometimes I announce the races on a Tuesday and then I get caught up in them going in circles. To be able to be in the middle of the scrum and be able to process that information, that's an elite track racer.
Yeah.
Because not only are you making sure you're in the right spot on the track, making sure you're towards the front, but you're also doing this mental math to know where you have to be, when you have to be somewhere to grab those points at the end if you want to win, because it can be a 20-lap race. The first person across the line might win that race being first overall, but they could be the 5th place in points.
It kind of reminds me of like counting cards at the blackjack table, like being able to have 2 separate trains of thought in your head at the same time.
That's a great comparison. I love it. And I am ultimately always impressed by the athletes that can do that. It is a learned trait. That's a very skilled athlete. The track riders have a level of discipline that is higher than a lot of disciplines that I'm really used to. I mean, elite level road riders have amazing discipline. Mid-pack level road riders, not so much sometimes. Mountain bikers, kind of known to party, same with cyclocross racers,
right.
At a certain point, not track racers. It really is not that atmosphere. It is the atmosphere of training hard. A lot of the athletes that are out here in the track are not your typical cyclist. Typical cyclist is generally looks to most people like you and I, a little tiny person.
Right.
But I get next to some of these athletes. I was talking to you earlier. We had UCI races. There were a few people who cast shadows. They were so big.
Yeah.
They look like linebackers on bikes. But to be able to turn over these really big gears, and in a road race, you might have to survive a 25 or a 40-mile race to be able to sprint at the end. Here, the athletes might be sprinting at the end of 200 meters, at the end of 333 meters. It's a very different skill set between that athlete and a criterium sprinter.
Right.
Not to say we don't get criterium sprinters and things like that. It's been really nice the last couple of weeks. We've had Davey Dawson's been out on Friday night, and I love Davey Dawson. He's just such a great human being, and he's a great personality. But as the crits come down a little bit, he comes over here so he can keep the speed in his legs.
So you mentioned a crit racer coming here to train. How are track racers? Do they tend to be track racers, or are there multidisciplinary athletes that are also good track racers? Like what kind of athlete typically reaches an elite level of track racing?
From my point of view, what I see, the really top level elite track racers are specific elite track racers. They really have a specific goal. They train for a very specific event. On a Friday night, we can see a group of people that do kind of everything. We're you and I are both very familiar with the Bike Works team that's out of Doylestown, and they have a great interdisciplinary squad. And they had a rider this year, Pearson Bruns, who just came up on our radar at the Velodrome, and he has skyrocketed up really quick. He's climbing the ranks, but then I start to look at his other results, and he's winning crits. He's winning mountain bike races. A good bike racer is a good bike racer.
Right.
They can be a very good bike racer on the track if they've got that speed. Pearson is a fine example of that. But the specialists win out every time.
Okay.
It just is.
Yeah.
We saw that in the UCI racing when it was here the second weekend that we were open. Some of our riders who are consistently winning all the time were getting 8th place, 10th place, which is extremely good. But all of a sudden this other talent pool drops in. But then the other part of that is you look through the events and there's a couple of the local athletes born and raised here in the top 3. And winning a race, and it makes you really happy to see the local guy doing great.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your experience, so you're the executive director as of January.
Correct. Yeah.
What were some of the challenges or what were you tasked with coming on for 2026?
The interesting thing about the Velodrome is everything that we've been talking about. It's a very niche sport. People know of it, but they don't always know of it.
Mhm.
And over years, the way that the focus on track has changed, we are not a direct Olympic track. So we don't have some of the legacy that was in the past from that, because we're a 333 meter track, not a 250 meter wood track.
Mhm.
But what I have been tasked with, and I'm so honored to be able to be here, and not that I've been tasked with it, that I pursued being here because I wanted to be here. I've known about the track since a very young age, when I was racing BMX as a teenager, and people would talk about the Velodrome and you don't know what that is. And now, as an adult who is fortunate enough to run a Velodrome, I'm trying to figure out how we can get BMX athletes into the track, because it's such a natural progression, working with one of the local coaches to do that. But there is something magical about this place. I sit in my office the second week I was here trying to figure out what I had gotten myself into, and there is this stream of cars parking and people getting out and going on rides in the area, and people who stop you and tell you stories. And our first Friday night, volunteers just showed up out of everywhere. I work with an amazing operations manager. I introduced you to her before we started, and Kelly does just a great job of having a really engaged team. And I have never experienced people who like a place like people love this Velodrome. It's a part of them. It really is. It's very impressive. Like, I got through that opening night. It was May 29th. It was a huge 50th anniversary celebration. We had gorgeous fireworks. Everything was great. It was a huge night. And I sat down at the end of the night and there was not anybody here. And I just looked around and I was like, wow. Tear ran down my face. I was like, I can't believe I'm fortunate enough to be able to do this. And then I came back the next day and, started it up again for the following Friday. And that's been really impressive. It's a really good place.
That's cool. So what is your day-to-day on non-race days? You come in, what does your day-to-day look like?
The amount of preparation that goes into 3 hours of racing is 20 to 40 hours of work. And multiple people to do that, to make sure that we have everything from fresh porta potties to an exciting race schedule and everything in between. And without an amazing team that I work with here, I could never get to a Friday night, a Tuesday night, a Saturday night. There is so much that goes on behind the scenes in this facility that on a Friday night, we have 3-4 hours of racing. It seems like this great, well-oiled machine, because it is. And there's an entire concession and food, thing going on. We have alcohol service. We have to stay on top of that for ordering, being in compliance, everything. And around that backdrop, we have world-class racing happening that has to be really good and serve not only the needs of these athletes who need points, need to make money, and our crowd who wants to see really exciting racing. So the day-to-day is really just making sure we hit the marks that we need to, the deadlines that people put out for us, the deadlines for USA Cycling, for the UCI dates. But it's also looking back and seeing what we've done and seeing how we can do it better, and seeing how we can do it so that it serves our racers and our community in the best way possible. And luckily we have a very good, well-oiled machine running, but these passionate people that are part of the Velodrome, when they give constructive criticism, it's actually real constructive criticism. It's not the mean stuff that you get used to.
Right.
I had a life in, wholesale and retail sales. When somebody got to me in wholesale sales, they were pretty hot. It was my job to talk them down.
Right.
But I'm walking around here on a Friday night and somebody will come over and tell me about this one particular thing that isn't working in the venue that I had no idea about. And it's not the end of the world, but it sure is nice to have that water fountain working.
Right.
Or to have that seat not be unstable. And they're very kind about it. They're not, you gotta fix this. They want the facility to be operating as the best it can as well.
Right.
So
it's like a sense of community ownership.
The collective effort of this community, I've never experienced in my life. It is heartening and wonderful and sometimes very confusing.
Well, where do you think that comes out of?
I think you know me a little bit to know that I'm reasonably altruistic. I'm here because I want to be. I think this started with the Rodales. When you start from a place of purity, it carries through. This was started with the absolute best intention to expose people to bicycles. 50 years later, it's doing the exact same thing. That message is very hard to fight against. If you're not a bike racer, if you're not a rider, if you're a typical human being, if you're a farmer 20 miles away from here, you probably learned to ride a bike as a child. You probably want your child to learn how to ride a bicycle. That message is very easy to convey to people because we don't always have to talk about racing. But once you do something and you can kind of go fast, racing always pops up. It's part of the natural experience, right?
Yeah. So obviously this track has worked. Why aren't there more than 16 tracks in the US?
This track has worked for 50 years because of this community, because people care. The track itself was started on a fund from Bob Rodale and his wife Ardith, and they put up the money to build this track, and they put money in a fund to be able to sustain this this facility. We still work on their fund as well as we work on donations. We are a 501c3. We're, like I think I said earlier, we're a joint partnership between Lehigh County and the Velodrome Fund. So we are actively always working with our community to try to bring in money, operating capital. Without the caring community here, we would be in a community that had a velodrome that was not as active. Plain and simple. The only reason that we continue at this level is because we have so many people who care, and it started because Bob donated it because he had this altruistic view. Not only did he donate, Bob and Ardith donate this, across the street there's the Bob Rodale Cycling and Fitness Park. There's 2 different cycling tracks in there. They hold races in there through the season on Thursday night, but there's walking tracks. It's accessible around this area because it is so nice. Now, I personally live in apartments just on the other side of the field, so I can walk here. A community has grown up around these parks, and these parks are centered around bicycles. This community is aware of bicycle riders. You know, one of my mantras in cycling now at this point in my life, and especially where I'm at right now, is the more people we can get to ride bicycles, the safer it is for all of us who choose to ride a bicycle.
Right.
Because the moment you decide to ride a bicycle and your family knows about it, they see somebody on the road and they go, oh my goodness, that's Vince. I don't want to hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting next to them in the car. But now they have awareness of riders on the road.
Right.
And the more that we can raise that awareness, the better it is for our community. Our community here at the Velodrome is Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, and beyond. But the racers benefit from that. They're on the road all the time.
Yeah.
They spend an enormous amount of time out on these roads training. So if somebody learns about cycling here on their 8-year-old and they start to notice riders out on the road, it's safer for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful thing to aspire for, is safety for us to be out there.
Sure. Absolutely. So you alluded to having grown up in the general area in Bucks County. And so talk a little bit about how T-Town came on your radar as growing up in Bucks County, or maybe it wasn't until after you were an adult.
I knew about T-Town from a very young age from BMX racer. People were talking about the track, and I was BMX kid. I thought BMX track, and they started talking about the Velodrome, and I had no idea what it was. I started working at bike shops in the city of Philadelphia, and I was 17 years old, and that's when the Velodrome really came into focus for what it was. I was fortunate enough to work for a gentleman named Harry Havnunian, who was a frame builder, a steel frame builder. And he built frames that athletes used up here. And we would make trips up here to watch the races because we would sponsor one of the signs on the board, or watch the athletes that raced on bikes that he made. And you just get hooked so quick if you're a cyclist watching this. A few years later into it, when I was married, my wife, who was my fiance at the time, was going to school at Kutztown, and I worked at a bike shop across the street from the Velodrome, and I'd come over here on my lunch hour and watch people work out. And at that time, there'd be a really big squad from New Zealand and a really big squad from Australia here for reasons we talked about earlier. It's their winter. Mm-hmm. But when they're out training and there's 20 or 30 of these people that are built like linebackers going really fast on the track, my favorite thing to do is I would stand on the boards, and the boards would hit me at about in the waist. And when the riders go by, they create so much air that it would pull my upper body into the track. Wow. And then they'd go by and I'd be able to sit back up. And, then you realize you're doing that. So you try to fight it. And like, it would take core muscles to try to stay in the same place because they're going so fast and creating such a vacuum. They want to pull you in. That's mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Like, I was racing mountain bikes and riding trials, and then I'm watching these guys on skinny tire bikes go so fast they're creating a vacuum in the air. It was amazing. It just hooks you in.
And did that lead you to trying track racing at all?
It did. I rode the track a little bit then. I love to dabble in racing here and there, but I always get a little bit of a lesson that maybe I'm not the athlete that I think I am, but I pop in and out of it, and I've always enjoyed it. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was riding a reasonably active cyclocross calendar, and cyclocross starts pretty good in September. Well, I come up here in August and race a couple of races in August. The great thing to get speed into your legs. Like I was saying before, like these folks behind us motor pacing, the only way to go fast is to go fast.
Right.
So come out, do a few races, learn how to get fast again, get those hole shots for cyclocross, be able to move those disciplines around. And, I started with the best intentions here and said, I'm not going to get a track bike. And then I get into one of our fleet of bikes that we have for our classes and start to ride around. And next thing I know, I'm going down next weekend to pick up my new track bike.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Nice.
It's kind of addicting.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So did you get something custom
built.
It's not. It is custom built. It's not custom built for me. It is custom built for Harry Havnunian.
Okay.
Harry retired from frame building, and he wanted to make a few bicycles that were at the top of what he could produce. So he made a road bike, a track bike, different styles of road bikes, depending on what they were, all made to Harry's measurements. I am lucky enough that Harry and I ride the same bicycle. He rides a centimeter longer seat post than I do, and I ride a centimeter longer stem than he does. So I've often swapped bikes out with him, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to pick up a track bike from him next week. But great story about the track and like my affinity for it and my attachment to it. Community programs are all the time here. We start community programs 6 a.m. If you want to learn to ride a bike, we've got a bike for you. You want to ride a track bike? We have 250 bikes in our community shed that we can teach you how to ride on. We've got 20-inch wheeled track bikes for the small kids, all the way up to, full size, a range of every size adult bike. When I first started working for Harry in 1987 or 1988, something like that, we received an order for the youth track bikes that are still used in the youth camps today.
That's awesome.
That are in the barn right now, the 20 to 24-inch bikes. And one of my jobs in the slow time was to take 170 millimeter crank arms and cut them off and polish the ends and then re-drill them and re-tap them to be smaller cranks for these little bikes. And I walked through the bike room and I see those little track bikes hanging with those chopped off cranks, and I think, man, I did that 40 years ago.
Full circle moment.
Yeah, it is a full circle moment. And the first time I realized it again, it was one of those that really made me sit down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a reasonably emotional human being, and that one went like, wow.
Did you not expect to see them still in use?
I didn't. I turned on the lights and I saw the yellow and the red bikes, and I knew exactly what they were. So it's interesting. It's great, and I mean, I think you take that moment to sit down and you don't just think, oh, I made that bike. You think, did that particular bike have a couple hundred kids on it that learn how to ride a bicycle here?
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate enough to work with the track. The track is so well respected and such a part of the Lehigh Valley that when I make requests to speak to our congressmen, our senators, they grant those requests.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday I was in one of our congressmen's offices talking to him about some plans that we have for long term. And one of his aides walked up and said, I started taking classes at the Velodrome when I was a kid. I took classes there for 8 years. This is somebody very high up in the congressman's staff.
Sure.
Has a real affinity to the track because they grew up here, coming to the track, taking these classes, just like kids take Little League classes other places. To normalize that behavior, to have youth classes that are accepted like Little League classes or like soccer classes, that's my dream.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that 30 years ago on a business trip to Europe, and I said, we could do that in the United States. We'll be doing something right.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about kind of your path to here.
Sure.
I did a little research via LinkedIn, and everything you have on there is bike industry. Is it? So is your entire adult career been bike industry?
It has. I did take one diversion of about 4 months to try to sell medical equipment.
Okay.
In my early 30s, and I positively hated it.
Mm-hmm.
I am a person that needs to have the passion for my work.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have the passion for the medical equipment, and the doctors didn't have the passion for the medical equipment they were prescribing. So I came running back to the bicycle industry. I'm 57 years old. I started working in the bike industry when I was 17. I've always been a bike kid. I received a banana seat bike with big handlebars when I was 4 or 5, and there's pictures of me jumping it off the cut out of the driveway on my very first ride out the door. And that particular bike became my first BMX bike, and got new handlebars and a 10-speed seat. And I've always been enamored with bicycles. So at 17 years old, when I was offered a job to work in a bike shop, I thought I won the lottery, man. And then I was so fortunate enough to work for a frame builder. It's not just a bicycle shop, and lots of people have worked in bicycle shops. I've worked in straight bicycle shops. The frame building is just, it's so amazing to watch. And I had a really full circle moment in that. I'll be able to talk about that in a moment, but it set me off on this path of exploration where I just wanted to see where I could go on the bicycle in business. Use that metaphor. Where can I go on the bicycle, but where can it take me? Like, I always worked in the bike shop at retail, and when the sales reps would come in, I'd be that person going, hey, how do I get your job? How can I do what you're doing?
Right.
And eventually I grew to do that. And I was an outside sales rep for 25 years. I know that I've driven over 1 million miles in my life selling bicycles, which is really weird. But being a bicycle rep, I would go to independent shops and I would talk to the shop owners and I would talk to the mechanics and the salespeople. And it's such a great, wholesome community, and it really shaped who I am as a person today. I have my best friends in life from those experiences. But it taught me how to work in a way that was different because I didn't go to an office. Joked for years my office had a windshield. I would go to these different shops. I would see different people, but I had to put on events. We had to do things to get people activated, to start to bring people to the shop, to get them excited in whatever brand I happened to be selling. And it turned me on to events, and I just always accepted that events were part of sales until I got a little bit further in the sales cycle where I started to get into a little bit of sales management and realize how much event work I was doing. So I was working in the bike industry, and I started having a little bit of a side gig doing some event work. I first met you the first time working with a great event corporation called G4 Events, and they put on this wonderful breast cancer charity event for a company called the Tour de Pink, the Young Survival Coalition, which, I mean, like, that's my coffee mug from it, near and dear to my heart. And working those events in so many capacities and doing everything in them, from event fencing, pulling it off the truck and throwing it in place and doing it at the end of the event, to getting the porta potties set up or organizing them, I came to realize that I'm a reasonable race announcer. So I had a pretty good side career for quite a while announcing races. I love doing podiums. My favorite thing about announcing is blowing people up, because I know how hard they work to get there. I mean, the athlete is the quintessential iceberg. You see that very tip of the top, but you don't see that person not going to parties. You don't see that person eating a lot of food that they may not want, but they know they have to feed the machine with. There is so much that goes into it that when they finally get a chance to stand on the podium, I want to make sure they're celebrated.
Right.
And if I have a chance to do a kid's podium, I'm going to do a kid's podium harder than I'll do a pro elite podium every single time. Because my belief is that 10-year-old is going to come home and watch that video 100 times and hear their name over enunciated. The pro doesn't care.
Right.
Not that they don't care. They care about winning the race. They care about being on the podium, but they want to get their picture. They want to go cool down. They want to get out of Lycra. They want to eat that food that they need to get into them. Race announcing started to fill my cup again in cycling. It brought so many different aspects together where I was at that point started to run a sales agency that I owned on the East Coast, represented a bunch of premium brands, and doing a lot of race announcing and really just enjoying myself and getting to know more and more people. From there, I was lucky enough to run a couple of companies. And then full circle moment that I was talking about earlier is the last position that I held before the executive director at the Velodrome here is I was running manufacturing for a steel bicycle company in Detroit, Michigan. And to have started at 17 years old, working in a really small shop where we made bicycles one at a time in the basement of a row home in Philadelphia, to be managing a 50,000 foot warehouse where we're pumping out 150 built bikes a day, was one of those moments where I was pretty happy, looked back and said, my 13-year-old self is probably going to be okay with me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Might think I'm dorky for any number of reasons, but what I'm doing wasn't one of them. And that's how I feel about being here at the Velodrome, is it allows me to use these skills that I've accumulated over 40 years in business to help grow the Velodrome, to help grow the reach through marketing, to help make a little bit more exciting racing in the Velodrome by inviting more people, by having international events that international riders want to come to. It's something that means so much to me. Why I wanted to be at the Velodrome, why I have been talking to Andrew Norelli, who is the head of our board of directors. He's a Rodale. And I called him up and started speaking to him. I want to help get this place into the next 50 years, because this is a jewel for cycling on so many levels. We have the riding across the street. We have community programs here. We have this fascinating racing on Friday nights. And what the team that we have at the Velodrome right now is working on is taking our community programs out into the community so that we are representing into Allentown, into Bethlehem, into Easton. Currently, all of the community programs we run are for our cycling community or the local community here. We have the local clubs that people can come and join, but we are working into 2027, 2028 to get into the communities of Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, listen to them about how they want to use a bicycle, and then help build programs that will help boost the amount of people riding a bike. Going back to the more people ride a bike, the safer it is for everybody else. But I love racing. I love what we're doing on a Friday night. When I think about serving our community, our closest community through those three communities is Allentown. A family of four in Allentown does not make a lot of money. I believe it is $60,000 or less for four people to live in Allentown. If we can normalize the use of a bike for one of the adults in a household to go to work on, we can alleviate a lot of money problems for that particular household. We could chop 10 or 15 grand out of that budget that's required for upkeep for the vehicle. If it's normalized for people to do shorter trips on bicycles. If we can work in the communities that are a little disadvantaged financially, or if we can work in communities such as a Downs community where you have a very functioning human being that can work, that can pay rent, that can live by themselves, but can't drive an automobile, a bicycle is a wonderful alternative. We can help that person ride safely. We can help them learn how to ride a bike. We can provide them with a bicycle. That's the thing that really excites me and that the community here really gets. When we do a presentation and we bring an athlete to help make a point. We have real live superheroes in front of people. If you are 8 years old or if you are 80 and we start to do a presentation and there is a human being that is standing in front of you in full Lycra that's got red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, and is completely covered in muscles. That's the definition of a superhero.
Yeah.
And then you get a little bit of a connection to that person and you want to find out what that person does. And then you come here to the track and you see this enormous muscled person that talked to you really kindly, come out here and go really fast. You're hooked.
Yeah.
That's setting the hook in the cheek right there.
That's great. All right. I'm going to one more question and then we can wrap it up.
I appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
So as someone who's worked in basically one industry for 40 years, and it's also your passion off work, what is the key to remaining dedicated to one industry without burning out, without losing the passion for the thing you're working on? Like there's a saying, like if you make your hobby your job, you have to find a new hobby. But I imagine you still ride.
Well, I think part of that is being okay with the changes you go through in life and being okay with the mindsets you go through in life. I don't think my 22-year-old self really cared about the people in Allentown riding a bike. And I think that's okay. But the bicycle is an equalizer across the board. Having spent time at events, having spent time in shops, I have spoken to bicycle riders of absolutely every shape, size, color, nationality imaginable. It is the great equalizer. And coming up in bicycles, raising children, getting a different perspective on life, my perspective on bicycles has changed dramatically from when I started, but it's just never been something that I wanted out of my life. I've just always wanted different things out of the bicycle. Sometimes I use it just to ride to clear my head. Sometimes I ride it for camaraderie. Sometimes I ride it real quick to get back to my house when I forgot my phone when I walked out the door. But it's just something that I made room for. And at a certain point, when it did start to be a little bit of work, I gave myself a couple other hobbies. And I realized there are other things I do like in the world other than bicycles. I really enjoy woodwork. My father was a great woodworker, and I have his shop that I'm fortunate enough to be able to use at times. And I started to paint a couple of years ago. I'm absolutely dreadful at it. I couldn't even paint a portrait of anything. I move color around, but it keeps me occupied and I really like it. It calms me down. And I found a few other things that I can do besides the bicycle.
Sounds pretty key. Yeah.
It is. And it's a nice way to go about life. I spent 25 years as an outside sales rep. Like I said, I drove over 1 million miles. If I cannot drive my car through an entire week, I am so happy to not get behind the wheel of my car. I strategically moved here when I started to work at the Velodrome so I can walk from my front door to the front door of my office in 7 minutes with my 2 dogs running around in the field being maniacs and making me giggle on the way home and on the way to work. Having the ability to do that and calm myself to be in this environment is priceless. And I walk to and from work and I always see people riding bikes. It's just part of what people do around here.
Yeah, when I pulled into the parking lot, there was a group that had met at this parking lot to go for a ride, and they were all coming back. It was really cool to see.
There's almost never not people leaving or coming from here on bicycles, and it's always great. When I have the time that I'm not running around to be able to go and talk to them, they've all got different stories and different reasons on why they're here almost every time.
Okay, I lied. One more question. Where's your favorite place to ride right now? Other than the track.
Physical location or type of bike or?
Yeah, let's go with type of bike and where do you take it? Say if you're gonna go out the office door.
Yeah, if I'm gonna go for a ride, I have a bicycle that I had built for me when I was in Detroit, and it is using R&D technology to make it exactly like my old one. And when I say R&D technology, it's there's an old joke. It's called rip off and duplicate.
Okay.
I took my old bike frame, completely disassembled it, and threw it in a frame jig, and then locked down all the angles and had down to where the water bottle boss placements were on my old bike, so that it could be built exactly the same, but to new modern aesthetics and needing disc brakes and things like that. So I have an exact duplicate of the road bike that I've been riding for 20 years that Harry Havnunian gifted me. And I have it built up for randonneuring. I have full fenders on it. I have a steel fork with a rack on the front. And as opposed to having a handlebar, I have a little metal Stanley lunchbox that I currently have mounted to my rack. But if I want to go out for a full day, I have some really nice bags that I had made for me. So it looks like a Randonnauer bike. It rides just like a traditional road bike. And that's my default bike. That's what I go to pretty much every time. I've got a nice gravel bike that I ride as well, and I have a really nice hardtail mountain bike that we built in Detroit as well.
Okay. And where would you take, say, your gravel bike if you went out the door?
Man, there are so many good gravel roads around here. For instance, the Ride Monkey Knife Fight. Dave Pryor, fantastic event promoter, also on the board of directors at the Velodrome, and a good friend of mine. He puts on 6 gravel events. His start of the season is Monkey Knife Fight. This year we started here at the Velodrome. Within 5 or 10 miles, there are very good dirt roads here.
Some steep ones too.
Very steep ones. I think in 2018, I helped G4, the event group, put on a ride here called the Rock and Road event that we brought Andrea Toffee in. And Andrea Toffee is a very elite European road pro who won Paris-Roubaix. So on that ride, we finished Paris-Roubaix style. Paris-Roubaix finishes in the Roubaix Velodrome, that Rock and Road ride. We let people come in and finish one lap on the Velodrome. I was fortunate enough to announce that event and spend a good amount of time with Andrea Taffy, and what a fun human being. And we got to help lead a few of the rides pre to that event and showing Andrea some of the roads around here. So there are very good steep gravel roads around here, very close. You don't have to work hard to find them. You actually have to work hard to kind of stay off of some of them, because unless you're a pretty good bike rider, jumping your road bike on them is gonna give you a handful real fast.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Right on. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Yeah. One of my claims to fame was I had Andrea Toffee ask me to slow down on a gravel descent. He said, "The ride's tomorrow." I said, "Not for me. I'm announcing." The only time I can go fast is today. He's like, "Well, then you go ahead."